Bob, do you remember the day we were doing the finale, and two of us were on the stage, and Michael came across the stage and he said, "I quit. I'm going to Paris." And you went, oh, blah, 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 blah.
That might have been because Joe Papp was running the Lincoln Center Theater at the time, and we had our eyes on the Newman, and Joe Papp said to Michael, "I'm going to put you in the Vivian Beaumont." And Michael said, "But I have the ultimate proscenium show. We cannot play the Beaumont." And Joe said, "Well, I need you in there." And so Michael was going to pull the show from him, and he went running up to Bernie and Jerry and started auditioning the score. And then finally Joe came around, and we opened down there. But it was very
Scary.
close at the last minute that we would not happen.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Kelly, you had a conflict with another job, and Michael did something wonderful.
Yes, he did. We had done the first workshop, and I think it was 5 weeks. And then Michael said, "Okay, everybody, we're taking off. Everybody, I'm going to go now find the money, find the backing, figure out how we're going to get this done. And so go off and do your thing." And I was in a point in my life where I was newly divorced or separated from my husband. I was broke. I had 2 weeks of unemployment left, and I got a call to replace in the national company of Irene. And I didn't want to. I really didn't want to do that old show, but it was a principal role. It was Helen McFudd, and that was, I had sworn off chorus work. Actually, Rachel Lilly was my last chorus job, and I was not going to do it anymore. So here it was a role, and it was money, and it was the middle of winter, so I went in and auditioned for it and got it. Went to California with my dog, and rehearsed in Los Angeles. They were switching from Debbie Reynolds over to Jane Powell as the lead, and we opened in Denver, and as we're in Denver, I start hearing the murmuring about the Michael Bennett workshop is getting back together, and my heart was broken. I was devastated. I kept thinking to myself, look, you did what you had to do. This was a survival technique. You had to do it. That's what God wants. You have to accept it. I had 6 months on that contract. I just started, but it was killing me. So now we go to Houston. I mean, it was just like that second-tier tour, Houston and Detroit, It wasn't San Francisco and Chicago, And so I get to Houston, and there's a message for me at the hotel to call Michael Bennett. And I called him, and he said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm in Houston." He said, "What are you doing in Houston?" I said, "Irene." And he said, then I explained to him why I had done it. He said, "You should have told me. I would have lent you the money." And this was kind of an ongoing thing with Michael and me too. I said, I can't borrow money from you. I need to earn the money. I can't owe you money. And I'm sorry. I did what I had to do. Okay. He said, "Okay, so where are you next week?" And I said, "Detroit." And he said, "Okay, let me see what I'm going to do, what I can do." So that gave me a little bit of hope. And I get to Detroit, and a few days into that, there's another message from Howard Feuer, who was the producer on this Irene. And I said, "Howard Feuer called me." So I called Michael, and I said, "I have a message here to call Howard Feuer. Why?" And he said, "I think I got you out of the show." And I mean, my God, it was like, angels and harps. And he said, "I'm going to have to buy out your contract." And so this is a perfect example now of Michael's power and manipulation and wonderfulness. I call Howard Feuer after this conversation with Michael, and the first thing that Howard Feuer said to me is, "I would never do anything to hurt your career." Okay, and so, and I mean, hi, I would never do anything. So he did. He bought me out of the show. And man, I mean, talk about an ego stroke. I mean, if you're insecure, to have someone like Michael Bennett doing that for you. And I remember I came in late to rehearsals. And I remember walking to rehearsals, I kind of felt like a star. It's like they were all waiting for me. But then I do remember the day that he came up while we were warming up on stage at the Newman, and Michael would remember how he would wander in and out between us smoking a cigarette, and then the drums would be playing. It was like a Luigi class, drums and the piano, and it was all like funky and real cool. And Michael comes up and he puts his head on my shoulder like that, and he said, "I just got the bill for Irene."
Certainly, I was always grateful to Michael and Bob. They hired my wife to go into Follies as a replacement, so that was kind of, "Hi, Steve, thank you very much." And I went, "Hi, Michael, thank you a great deal." And then eventually I went into Chorus Line also with Zach, and it was one of the more startling moments of my life, certainly. There was one moment that I had, which kind of shows you what Michael was all about to me, was when Nick Dante's story, Paul, on stage, was telling Nick Dante's story. I was in the back of Zach, and knowing that time we were there that first night, it always used to come up on me, and I would cry in the back, and Tom Porter got wind of it, kind of, and Tom Porter would check me out, and then one night I'm sitting there and I'm watching Paul, and I'm crying, and Michael Bennett is in my ear, and he says, "You're not supposed to cry here." Well, I must have shook for 20 minutes on that one. And he says, "There's the urgency, you want to hear the story," and he went through it, whatever it was, which I almost didn't hear. I just heard, "Don't cry," and I never did again. But Michael stepped up for a number of people, turning many people like myself with a mediocre talent for whatever it was, and made something out of my past now that I look back on it. So someone that does that for you, I think you always think the world of, and I think most of us really do love Michael so very much. And on July 2nd, always thinking of Michael, and there's so many times when my wife and I are proud to be Al and Christine, when we wound up in Ridgefield Library, when they played every little step, and we spoke to the people in Ridgefield, and I talk about Byork, and Kelly, and Bob, and Michael, and it's some of the best moments of my life, and Harvey Evans, of course.
Unfortunately, we have to go on, but I want to just ask Carolyn, the music in the mirror, tell me how much acting they gave you, or was it specific, or because it's just amazing.
Okay, I'll be brief. I know we're probably running long here. Again, the most important thing for me was the acting intention that came through the steps and the choreography. And as I was saying earlier, Music in the Mirror was a very difficult number for me. I mean, you saw that woman up there, Donna McKechnie. Oh my God. I was brought in to understudy her and eventually ended up understudying Kelly as well. But she never ceased to amaze me. Her stamina and her talent and her brilliance, and I loved watching her. You know, it was a far different thing to get up there and perform that number. And I went on the first time for Donna, about 10 days after she had been on the cover of Newsweek. The first time a dancer had been on the cover of Newsweek for over a decade, I think. I think Baryshnikov had been the last one. And all of a sudden, I'm standing there in the dark, and they had to make that announcement. Oh, it was understudy purgatory. I mean, it was, but we all lived through it. I'm very, very proud that so many other wonderful Cassies came down the line after us. But for a while, it was just Donna and me. And I never tired of watching her and learning from her. So, I mean, she was really quite brilliant, and still is, so.